Welcome to True Unseen Crime, where the most chilling, mysterious, and thought-provoking cases come to life. If you're new here, make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss an episode. Let's dive into today's case. David Morgan had always been the type of man who believed in clear boundaries, right versus wrong, good versus evil. But his current mission was making him rethink that belief. As an undercover agent for the Bureau of Narcotics, he had infiltrated one of the most notorious criminal syndicates in the Midwest, run by a ruthless cartel boss named Victor Ramirez. For months, he had worked tirelessly to gain the trust of Ramirez and his men, all while pretending to be one of them. His cover had been flawless so far. David was a seasoned veteran in the world of undercover operations, but this mission was different. It wasn't just about gathering intel, it was about survival. He had spent weeks, months, getting deeper into the cartel's inner workings. Ramirez trusted him completely. David had provided them with information, helped with money laundering operations, and even overseen shipments of narcotics, always under the watchful eye of the cartel's soldiers. And every time he did, a little more of himself seemed to slip away. It was early morning when David received a coded message from his handler, Agent Cole. The words were simple but chilling. It's time. The operation moves forward today. David knew what that meant. His superiors had decided it was time to take down the cartel. They'd been gathering evidence for months, and the arrests were imminent. But something inside David made him hesitate. He'd become too involved, too entangled in this dangerous web of deceit and manipulation. Victor had come to trust him completely, had even started calling him family, a term David had heard too often in the criminal world. But to Victor, family didn't mean trust or loyalty. It meant obedience, the kind that was demanded and expected. David knew if he wasn't careful, he might be the one who would end up on the chopping block. The weight of the decision began to press down on him. Could he really take down the man who had treated him like a brother? Would he become just another pawn in a larger game that he never signed up for? David's life took a dangerous turn when he was invited to a meeting with Victor in an abandoned warehouse on the outskirts of town. It wasn't unusual for the cartel leader to summon him. He had earned his place within the organization, and such meetings were becoming more frequent. But this time, there was something different about the way Victor looked at him. The weight in his gaze seemed heavier, more calculating. David walked into the warehouse, his shoes echoing against the concrete floor. The large, empty space was lit only by dim, flickering bulbs overhead. In the center, Victor stood surrounded by crates of cocaine, stacks of cash, and several men standing watch. The tension was palpable. Victor greeted him, a cold smirk creeping across his face. "You're a man of your word. You've proven your worth to me." David nodded, swallowing hard. "I'm just doing my job." "You've done more than that," Victor continued, his voice low and dangerous. "You've earned my trust. You've earned my loyalty." The words hit David like a punch to the gut. Loyalty. In this world, loyalty wasn't something you gave, it was something you demanded, something you controlled. And now, David found himself on the edge of a precipice, where loyalty to Victor would either cost him his life or expose him as the undercover agent he was. Victor leaned in closer, his voice dropping to a whisper. "I want you to know something, David. You're not just a part of this family, you are this family. And family sticks together, no matter what." David's heart skipped a beat. There was no going back now. The trust that Victor placed in him was more than just a tactic to make him feel like part of the crew. It was a dangerous bond that would be impossible to sever, without bloodshed. And David wasn't sure if he could keep playing this role any longer. David's mind raced as he took in the weight of Victor's words. The plan was clear. Gather evidence on the cartel's operations and bring them down, but at what cost? And how much of himself would he have to sacrifice to do so? Weeks passed, and David's paranoia grew. The deeper he went, the more dangerous his situation became. He had started to get close to Victor and his inner circle, and he knew it wouldn't be long before the cartel became suspicious. He'd already pushed the boundaries of his cover. Now, every move felt like a potential misstep. One night, while David was at a local diner, he overheard a conversation between two of Victor's men, Terry and Luis. The two were arguing over a shipment that had gone missing, and their voices were laced with suspicion. "I don't trust Morgan," Terry muttered, his voice low and dangerous. "He's too clean. Too perfect. Something's off about him." David froze in his seat, gripping his coffee cup tightly. He hadn't expected anyone to catch on so soon, but the words were chilling. The cartel was starting to suspect him. Luis responded in a hushed voice. "You're paranoid. He's proven himself. He wouldn't turn on us." Terry shook his head. "If I were you, I'd keep a closer eye on him." David felt his heart race. The jig was up. His cover was starting to unravel, and the walls were closing in. But he couldn't back out now, not with so much at stake. The FBI was counting on him. The evidence they had gathered could bring down not just Victor Ramirez, but the entire criminal organization that had plagued the city for years. But if the cartel knew he was a rat, he would be dead before he could warn anyone. The next few days were a blur of mounting tension. David couldn't shake the feeling that he was being watched, his every move scrutinized. Even the slightest slip-up could expose him. He had to play the game, stay loyal to the cartel while secretly feeding his superiors information. But with every conversation, every handshake, every moment of trust with Victor, he felt himself getting lost. One night, David received an encrypted message from Agent Cole. The message was terse but clear. "Time to move. Get the evidence and get out. We'll cover you." David knew this was it. The FBI was ready to make their move. But he wasn't sure he was ready to make his own. The life he had built undercover, his relationships with Victor and the cartel, was now at risk. But if he stayed, if he betrayed his agency, he'd be living a lie forever. At that moment, he realized that the real betrayal wasn't just from the criminals. It was from the system he had sworn to protect. He was caught in a game where the rules were always changing, and there was no clear path to salvation. David had no choice. He had to make a decision. That night, as he sat in his car outside the cartel's headquarters, he made the call. He would gather the evidence and hand it over to his superiors. But as he prepared to leave, he realized that it wasn't the criminals who posed the greatest danger. It was the system that had created him. The betrayal was inevitable. David had already crossed the line. His loyalties were divided between his duty to the FBI and his newfound family in the cartel. He had been playing both sides for too long, and now the consequences of his choices were coming to a head. The encrypted message from Agent Cole was clear. "The operation is set to go down. Gather the final evidence and we'll move in. Don't hesitate." But hesitation had become a constant companion for David. His mind raced as he sat in his car outside the cartel's headquarters, the familiar weight of the decision pressing down on him. The clock was ticking. His time as an undercover agent was running out, and with it, the facade he had created with Victor and his men. David had promised himself that he would bring down the cartel, no matter what it cost him. But now, as he prepared to turn over the final pieces of the puzzle, something felt off. He had spent months earning Victor's trust. Could he really betray the man who had treated him like family? Suddenly, his phone buzzed. It was a text from an unknown number. The message was simple. "Don't do it. We know everything." David froze. The hairs on the back of his neck stood up. Who could have sent this message? Had the cartel caught on? Or was it his own agency trying to warn him? He quickly checked the number, but it was untraceable. This wasn't a simple threat. It was a warning. David's heart raced. He needed answers, and fast. With the evidence in hand, he drove to the meeting point with his FBI handler, hoping to get some clarity. But as he pulled into the parking lot, something felt wrong. The lights were off, and there were no signs of Agent Cole. He stepped out of the car, scanning the area, and that's when he heard the sound of footsteps behind him. Before he could react, a dark figure emerged from the shadows, a gun drawn. "David." The voice was calm, but it carried a weight of authority. "I didn't think you'd make it this far." David's heart skipped a beat as he recognized the voice. It was Agent Cole. But something was different. His normally stern demeanor was gone, replaced with an eerie calmness. His eyes didn't seem as familiar anymore. "I don't know what's going on, Cole," David said, trying to stay calm. "I have the evidence. I'm ready to help bring them down. Cole's lips curled into a slight smile. You think it's that simple? He lowered the gun slightly, but the tension in his posture was unmistakable. You've been playing both sides, David. You think you've been working for us, but the truth is, we've been working for you. David's mind spun as the words sank in. What was he talking about? Cole continued, You weren't just an undercover agent for the FBI, David. You were a key player in a much larger operation. You were never meant to take down the cartel. You were meant to infiltrate them from within, to gather intel on their money laundering operations for something much bigger than you could ever imagine. David's world shifted as he realized the truth. He had been a pawn all along. The cartel was only part of a much larger game, and he had been unknowingly part of it. What do you mean? David asked, his voice a mix of disbelief and anger. Cole's smile faded. You were never meant to betray them. You were meant to gain their trust, to make sure they kept running their operations. And in return, we'd protect you. We'd give you everything you ever wanted: power, money, freedom. The cartel wasn't our endgame. It was just a stepping stone. David could barely process the words. He had been living a lie. The FBI hadn't been trying to take down the cartel. They had been using him to manipulate and control the very people he had come to care about. Why? David whispered, his voice breaking. Cole stepped closer. You really don't get it, do you? This entire operation was never about the law. It was about control. You've been working for us from day one. We knew what you were capable of. You were the perfect candidate, someone with the right skills, the right mindset. And when you got too deep, when you started getting emotional, we had to intervene. We knew you wouldn't betray Victor. So we did it for you. David's chest tightened as the realization hit him like a ton of bricks. He was just another tool in their hands. The FBI hadn't been trying to bring justice. They had been trying to manipulate the entire situation from the start. But the twist didn't stop there. David's phone buzzed again. This time it wasn't a text, it was a live video feed. He quickly opened the message. The screen flickered, and then he saw Victor. The cartel boss was sitting in a chair, his hands bound, a bloody gash on his forehead. He looked directly at the camera, his expression one of fury. David. Victor's voice was harsh, but steady. You're a dead man. They've played you. The real game was never about drugs, money, or power. It was about taking control of everyone in this city. You were just a pawn, just like everyone else. David's blood ran cold as the full scope of the betrayal dawned on him. The FBI wasn't just after the cartel. They were after everyone. They had orchestrated this entire thing from the start, using Victor and his men as a distraction while pulling the strings behind the scenes. You're a part of the game now, David, Victor continued, his voice low. But you don't have to be. You can walk away if you're willing to risk everything. David's mind raced. The FBI had been using him to control both sides of the conflict. He had been played from the very beginning. He could walk away, but it would cost him everything: his job, his freedom, his life. But could he live with the consequences of his choices? And if he stayed, could he ever escape the web of manipulation he had become tangled in? Suddenly, the gun was back in his face, and Cole's voice broke through his thoughts. You have a choice, David. You can help us finish what we started. Or you can disappear, and we'll make sure no one ever hears from you again. David felt the weight of the decision pressing on him. The world around him was crumbling, and he had to make a choice. He could continue to play the game or burn it all down, risking his life for a shot at freedom. David's hands trembled as he lowered the phone. The haunting image of Victor's face still burned into his mind. The words echoed in his thoughts like a broken record. You are just a pawn, just like everyone else. David felt the walls closing in on him. Everything he had believed about his mission, the moral compass that had driven him to become an undercover agent in the first place, was now a lie. The FBI hadn't been trying to bring justice to the streets. They had been orchestrating an entire operation to control both the criminals and the law enforcement world, pulling strings from behind the scenes. And now, they were forcing him to choose between his survival and his humanity. With Cole's guns still aimed at him, David's mind raced. What's the cost of doing the right thing now? He had spent his entire career believing that the law would ultimately triumph over the darkness, But now, the line between right and wrong had blurred beyond recognition. Was he really trying to do the right thing all along, or had he been manipulated into this path, just like Victor said? You have to choose now, David. Cole's voice sliced through his thoughts, cold and unforgiving. You're in this deep, and there's no going back. David swallowed hard. The pressure to make a choice had never felt more real. Everything he had worked for, every relationship he had forged, had led to this moment, this painful, impossible choice. The deal with the devil. Victor's right, you know, Cole continued, his voice laced with an almost mocking sympathy. You've been a puppet on strings. You never realized that we were the ones who gave you all this power. We knew you were just what we needed, someone who could get close enough to the cartel to feed us what we wanted, and when we were done with you, well, we'd pull the strings tighter, and you'd do what we wanted. But now you have a choice. You can help us finish what we started, help us neutralize the cartel once and for all, or you can disappear. Just vanish, and we'll let you live. But remember, if you leave, we'll erase everything. No one will ever know you existed. David felt his pulse hammer in his ears. Everything had led to this final decision, this final crossroads. Was this all just one elaborate manipulation? A game where no one wins, not even the players? Cole's voice dropped again, softer now, almost a whisper. You helped them, David. You betrayed us before they even knew. The cartel knew the moment you stepped into their world that you would betray them one day. They're smarter than you think. But I know you've gotten attached to them. I know the pain you're in. You don't have to help us. You can walk away. It's all up to you. David's mind raced through the endless possibilities, but there was one truth that he could no longer ignore. If he chose to walk away, he'd have to run for the rest of his life, hunted by both the cartel and the FBI. If he chose to stay, he would seal his fate as nothing more than a tool of the state. Victor's words echoed in his mind. The real game was never about drugs, money, or power. It was about taking control of everyone. His body stiffened with realization. This entire operation wasn't about breaking the law or stopping crime. It was about control. The FBI, the cartel, the underworld, and the law enforcement agencies had all become entangled in a deadly dance, fighting for influence and power over the streets. And David was nothing more than a pawn, caught between two titanic forces. But then the twist hit him. Victor was right. He had to walk away. The unexpected ally. The moment David made the decision, something unexpected happened. His phone buzzed once again, but this time it wasn't from Cole. It was from Terry, one of Victor's closest lieutenants. The message was cryptic. We know about Cole. It's time to end this. We can help you. David froze. The betrayal from the FBI had been deep, but could he trust the cartel now? Were they trying to manipulate him again, or was this a genuine offer to escape the mess he'd found himself in? David had always thought that his allies were the FBI, his only support. But the betrayal ran deeper than he'd ever imagined. Now he was being offered a chance to turn the tables and ally himself with the very people he had spent months infiltrating. The idea was absurd, but it was also his only shot at survival. He hesitated for a moment before responding. How can I trust you? The reply was instant. Meet me at the old warehouse at 3 a.m. We'll explain everything. The decision was made. If he didn't take the chance, if he didn't act now, he'd be dead before sunrise. He couldn't trust the FBI. They had lied to him from the start. But the cartel, they wanted him alive. And now they were giving him the only chance he had left. The final showdown. David arrived at the warehouse just before 3 a.m., the chill of the night air biting at his skin. His heart pounded in his chest as he approached the door. It creaked open as he pushed it, revealing a dark room filled with shadows. Out of the darkness, Terry stepped forward, his face hard as stone. You've made the right choice, Terry said, his voice low. Cole never told you the full truth. He's been playing you for months, using you to eliminate the competition. David narrowed his eyes. What do you mean? The cartel was never the real target, Terry continued. It was never about drugs or money. It was always about control. The FBI has been working with corrupt politicians, law enforcement, and corporations for years. You've been a pawn in a much larger game. They used the cartel to get to us, to eliminate our competition and then take over the streets. The problem is they don't want the power, they want to own it all. David's mind raced. The FBI had been using him to destroy the cartel, but their endgame wasn't just power, it was complete control. The revelation sent a shockwave through him. The entire system he had trusted, believed in, had been nothing but a facade, and it was all unraveling before his eyes. Terry continued, "If you want out of this mess, we can help. We can get you away from all this, away from Cole, away from the game. But you have to act now. The FBI's going to come for you soon. They won't let you leave. And when they do, there's no turning back." David's head spun as he processed the reality of the situation. He had two choices: stay with the cartel and risk becoming part of the criminal world he had spent years infiltrating, or take a stand against the FBI, risking everything to expose the conspiracy. As he considered his options, the sound of sirens began to grow louder in the distance. The FBI was closing in. "Get in the truck, David," Terry said urgently. "It's now or never." David's pulse raced as he ran toward the vehicle parked in the shadows. The sirens were almost upon them. He had to make his decision. This was his final shot. The truck sped down the darkened streets, the headlights slicing through the night. David sat in the back, his mind a whirlwind of conflicting emotions. The sirens were growing louder, and his every instinct screamed at him to make a choice. The FBI would be at the warehouse within minutes, but could he truly trust the cartel? Could he trust Terry? His entire world was spinning out of control. The truck veered off the main road and into a maze of alleyways, its engine growling as it made sharp turns to evade the growing danger. Terry was silent, his focus entirely on the road. David glanced at the man next to him, trying to gauge his intentions. Was he really trying to help, or was this just another layer of the game? "You made the right choice," Terry finally said, his voice low, almost comforting. "Cole wasn't going to let you walk away. The FBI won't let anyone leave alive once they've been compromised. They don't know how to clean up their messes without taking out the people who could expose them." David's mind raced as he processed the gravity of the situation. Terry's words confirmed his worst fear. He had never been truly free. Even now, as he drove further into the heart of the criminal world, he realized just how deep the corruption ran. "I don't know what to believe anymore," David muttered, his voice barely a whisper. "Who am I supposed to trust?" Terry looked at him, his eyes hardening. "Trust the one person who's been straight with you. Trust yourself. The FBI doesn't care about you, David. They never did. You were a pawn, a tool to be used. The cartel, yeah, they're criminals. But at least they know how to play the game." David nodded slowly, but doubt still gnawed at him. The fear of making the wrong choice, of trusting the wrong people, was overwhelming. But what other options did he have? The FBI had shown its true colors. It was a machine, indifferent to the people it destroyed, a tool of power used to control everything it touched. The cartel was dangerous, but there was a strange comfort in their ruthlessness. It was honest in a twisted way. At least they didn't pretend to be something they weren't. The truck stopped at an abandoned building in the heart of the city, a rusted iron gate creaking open as they pulled into a hidden lot. Terry motioned for David to follow him inside. The air was thick with tension, each footstep echoing in the silence. Inside the building, the harsh fluorescent lights flickered overhead. The room was bare except for a few metal chairs and a long table. As they walked in, Terry led David to a seat and motioned for him to sit. "You've got one shot at this, David," Terry said, his voice low but steady. "You're either with us or you're out. No in between. The FBI won't just stop looking for you. They'll come for everyone you've ever known." David sat down, his mind racing. The weight of the decision was unbearable. He had always prided himself on his sense of justice, his moral compass. But now, in the face of betrayal from both sides, he wondered if there was any justice left to fight for. Terry sat across from him, leaning forward. "There's something you need to know, David. The FBI isn't just after the cartel. They've been playing the long game. They've been infiltrating everything from local politics to law enforcement, making sure that they're in control of the entire city. You're not just in danger from the cartel, you're in danger from them, too." David's heart skipped a beat. What do you mean? How deep does this go? Terry's eyes narrowed.
Deep.
Way deeper than you think. The FBI's operation isn't about taking down criminals. It's about controlling them. They've been eliminating any competition, making sure that everyone, cartels, politicians, cops, are all working for them in the shadows. David felt a sickening knot form in his stomach. So it's all a lie. Everything. The arrests, the busts, the people I thought I was helping, they were just pawns in their game. Terry nodded grimly.
Exactly.
They used you, David. You thought you were doing the right thing. You thought you were protecting people. But in reality, you were just a cog in a machine that was designed to break the system down and rebuild it in their image. The law isn't here to protect the innocent. It's here to protect itself. David was quiet for a long moment, taking in the enormity of the situation. He had spent his life believing in the ideals of law and order, but now he was faced with the harsh truth. The system wasn't what he had thought. It was a tool for power, wielded by those who cared only about control. The silence between them was broken by the sound of footsteps approaching. Another figure entered the room. It was Victor, the very man David had once thought of as the villain in this twisted world. But now, David realized, Victor was just another player in a game much larger than he had ever imagined. Victor's gaze locked onto David. "You're making the right choice," he said, his voice surprisingly calm. "The FBI will destroy everything you've ever cared about. They're not just targeting the cartel, they're targeting anyone who stands in their way." David's eyes narrowed. "You expect me to just join you? After everything that's happened?" Victor shrugged. "I don't expect anything, but I can offer you a way out. The cartel is not a group of heartless killers. We have rules. We have loyalty. The FBI, on the other hand, is a system built on lies and betrayal. You've seen it yourself." David's mind was still in a fog. He had been betrayed by both sides, but for the first time, he was seeing the cartel's offer in a new light. Was it really the lesser of two evils? "I don't know if I can trust you," David said, his voice shaking. "You've done horrible things." Victor's expression softened, almost as if he understood. "I know. We all have. But there's something different about you, David. You're not like the others. You've been played just like I was. But you're still standing. And that's worth something." David felt the weight of Victor's words. Could he really turn his back on everything he had known, on everything he had fought for, and join the cartel? Could he really betray the FBI, knowing the consequences it would bring? Before he could answer, his phone buzzed again. It was a message from Agent Cole. "You can't run, David. You think they'll protect you? You're wrong. We'll find you. And when we do, it's over." David's stomach twisted in knots. The FBI was closing in, and if he stayed in the cartel's world, there would be no turning back. But if he chose the FBI, it meant fighting against the very people who had tried to destroy him from the start. Terry leaned in, his voice urgent. "They'll come for you, David. You're not safe. The FBI doesn't let go of their people. You have one chance to escape, and it's here. The cartel will protect you, but you have to decide now." David's pulse quickened. The decision was final. There was no going back from this moment. David stared at his phone screen, the message from Agent Cole still glaring at him in cold, threatening letters. The words seemed to mock him now, an ultimatum that couldn't be ignored. "You think they'll protect you? You're wrong. We'll find you. And when we do, it's over." The message was a death sentence. The chilling promise from Cole had been clear. Escape was impossible, and the FBI would stop at nothing to bring him down. No matter which side he chose, the web of lies and betrayal that he'd become tangled in would continue to tighten. Terry and Victor were waiting, their eyes on him as he stood in the corner of the dimly lit room. The choice had never been more critical. He could feel the weight of it pressing down on him. His decision was more than just a fight for survival. It was about who he wanted to be. The man who had once believed in justice now stood at the edge of a precipice, unsure of which side to fall toward. "I know what you're thinking," Terry said softly, his voice almost reassuring. "You're wondering whether we can really protect you. You're asking yourself if the cartel can be trusted. But you need to understand, this isn't just about loyalty. This is about survival. We can get you out of this, but only if you help us. David glanced at Victor, who stood quietly, arms folded, watching him with a distant, calculating expression. And what's your angle, Victor? Why do you care what happens to me? You've played both sides before. Victor stepped forward, his eyes narrowing. I've been where you are, David. I've made my choices. I've betrayed people I cared about, and I've learned the hard way that you can't trust anyone when they've got their own agenda. But you're different. I see it in you. You're a survivor, and we need people like you on our side. David felt a surge of frustration. I'm not here to be anyone's pawn. You already are, Terry replied, his tone low but firm. You've been a pawn for the FBI, for the cartel, for everyone. You just don't know it yet. David shook his head, his heart racing. He was tired of being manipulated, tired of the lies that had followed him since his first undercover operation. He had spent years in this world, fighting to uphold what he believed was justice, but now, everything he thought he knew had shattered. The truth was clear now. There was no justice, only power. And power could be wielded by anyone with the strength to take it. Your only choice now is which side you want to stand with, Victor said, his voice carrying a cold finality. The FBI will kill you the moment you're no longer useful. They've already decided that. But if you stay with us, we'll keep you safe. We'll give you a new life. But first, you have to help us deal with the people who are coming for you. David's mind raced. He could see no escape from the mess he was in, but one thing became clear in that moment. Survival was everything. The moral compass that had guided him through his career no longer had a place in this world. The question wasn't about right or wrong anymore, it was about power and the price you paid for it. The FBI had made it clear that they would stop at nothing to erase him. They had already deemed him expendable. But the cartel, they were offering him a way out. A chance to survive. Maybe even thrive. He swallowed hard and made his decision. What do you need me to do? Terry gave him a sharp nod. We need to take down a few people in the FBI who are controlling the operation from the shadows. People like Cole, who are manipulating everyone to further their agenda. People who have been pulling the strings for too long. You've seen how far they're willing to go to keep their secrets buried. Now it's time to expose them. David's heart pounded in his chest as the gravity of the task set in. Taking down the FBI from the inside, it was a terrifying thought, one that made his blood run cold. But it was the only option he had left. The cartel was dangerous, yes, but the FBI's reach was even more terrifying. You'll need to go deep, Victor said, his voice grave. This won't be easy. You'll be playing both sides, and if you're not careful, they'll turn on you before you even get close to them. David nodded, determined to see this through. I know what I'm getting into. Terry reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a small device. It was a burner phone, its screen already lit up with a contact number. This is your way in. You'll contact them when you're ready. They'll help you get to the people who matter. But be careful. The deeper you go, the more dangerous it becomes. David took the phone, his fingers trembling slightly as he held it. The weight of the decision hung heavily in the air. There was no turning back now. As he prepared to leave the room, Victor's voice stopped him. David, he said, his tone unexpectedly soft. You need to know something. The cartel. Yes, we do terrible things. But unlike the FBI, we don't pretend to be something we're not. We're a family. And when you're in with us, we take care of our own. David didn't respond. The words hung in the air, but the truth was clear. It didn't matter what family he chose, there was no safe haven anymore. The world he had entered was one of betrayal, manipulation, and survival at all costs. He had already chosen his path, and now he would have to walk it to the bitter end. The final mission. David's first step in his mission to bring down the FBI was to make contact with the cartel's inside man. The burner phone buzzed as he dialed the number Terry had given him. It rang once, twice, before someone picked up. Are you in position? A voice on the other end asked. I'm in, David replied, his voice steady, but filled with tension. What's the first step? The voice didn't hesitate. We'll need you to get close to Cole. You already know how he operates. Use that to your advantage. We need you to get access to his private files. You'll find everything you need there. David's mind raced as he thought of how to get to Cole without raising suspicion. The man had been suspicious of him from the beginning, always keeping a watchful eye. It would take all his skills to get close enough to learn what he needed without blowing his cover. For the next few days, David carefully mapped out his moves. He would have to be smarter than ever, more calculated. His life, his very survival, depended on his ability to navigate this treacherous game. The unexpected return. As David prepared for the final confrontation, something unexpected happened. A message from Agent Cole arrived on his burner phone, and it sent a chill down his spine. "We know what you're planning, David. You can't escape us. You've made your choice, and it's a mistake. But you're still one of us. Come back. Help us finish what we started, and you'll be safe. Turn your back on us, and you'll never see the light of day again." David's stomach churned. It wasn't just a threat anymore. The FBI knew. They knew he had crossed the line. He stood at the crossroads once again. Was this his final chance to walk away, or was this the moment when everything he had worked for was lost forever? David's heart pounded in his chest as he read the message from Agent Cole. The threat was clear. The FBI knew everything. They were watching him, tracking his every move, waiting for him to slip up. The walls were closing in on him, and there was no more room to maneuver. Every decision he had made had led him here, to this point of no return. Terry's voice echoed in his mind. "This is it, David. You either fight to survive, or you let them take you down." But could he really trust the cartel? Could he trust anyone at this point? David stood at the edge of the precipice, staring at the burner phone in his hand. The world around him felt like it was spinning out of control. The FBI had already labeled him as expendable, and the cartel would only protect him as long as he was useful. There was no place for a man like him. He had betrayed the one institution he had once believed in, and now he was trapped in a game of survival. His phone buzzed again, snapping him out of his thoughts. It was a message from Victor. "We're ready. It's now or never. Meet us at the location." The final confrontation was about to unfold. The trap. David didn't hesitate. He knew what needed to be done. There was no turning back now. He grabbed his jacket, checked the burner phone one last time, and slipped out of the room. The dim glow of the streetlights guided him through the alleys, each step taking him closer to the endgame. The tension in the air was thick, like a storm that was about to break. As he neared the warehouse where he was supposed to meet Terry and Victor, his mind raced. He had to be careful. The FBI might be tracking him, and if they knew where he was going, he wouldn't make it out alive. But he had no choice. This was the only way to end the nightmare. He reached the warehouse, the place that had once been his haven, a place where he had worked alongside the FBI, where he had felt like he was making a difference. Now, it was just a shadow of what it once was, a place where betrayal and death lurked around every corner. David entered the warehouse cautiously, his eyes scanning the darkened interior. The only sound was the distant hum of a generator, casting a faint light on the cold concrete floor. He could hear voices ahead, low murmurs that quickly grew louder as he approached. Terry and Victor stood by a table in the center of the room, their backs to him. But they weren't alone. Agent Cole was there, too, his presence unmistakable. David froze, his blood running cold. The FBI had known all along. This wasn't a safe meeting, it was a trap. "Terry," David said, his voice low, but steady. "Victor, what's going on?" Terry turned around slowly, a slight smile tugging at the corner of his lips. "You've been a valuable asset, David. But I think you already know this was coming." Victor didn't say a word. He just stared at David with cold, calculating eyes. The deal had changed. David's mind raced as he tried to process what was happening. Was he being handed over to the FBI? Had Victor and Terry set him up? Was he always just a pawn in their game? Cole stepped forward, his expression unreadable. "You've made your bed, David. And now you're going to lie in it." David's fists clenched. The anger and betrayal burned deep within him. He had trusted these men. He had put his faith in them when he had no one else to turn to. And now, it seemed, they had sold him out. But there was one thing that David hadn't considered. He wasn't as trapped as he had thought. There was a way out. There always was. The unexpected twist. Just as David was about to speak, a loud noise rang out from the back of the warehouse. The sound of metal scraping against metal. A flash of movement. The door slammed open, and a new figure entered. The very last person David had expected to see. It was Agent Carter, the very man who had been his partner in the FBI for years, the one person who had always had his back. Carter had been the one to help him when things went wrong, the one who had trained him. But now, his appearance was like a lightning bolt, striking through the tension in the room. "Put the guns down, Cole," Carter said, his voice steady and commanding. "It's over." Cole turned, his face twisting in anger. "You're making a mistake, Carter. This is our operation. David is a liability, and he's been playing both sides. He needs to be dealt with." Carter's eyes flicked to David, and for a moment, the two men locked eyes. The bond they once shared was still there, but now it was clouded with suspicion and fear. Carter's stance was resolute, but David could see the uncertainty in his eyes. "I don't care what you think, Cole," Carter continued. "This isn't about you anymore. We've both seen the corruption within the Bureau. It's time to end it. And David is the key to exposing it." Terry and Victor exchanged wary glances, clearly unsure of what to make of this unexpected development. But David knew. He knew what Carter was saying. Carter wasn't here to save him. He was here to tear down the very system they had both been a part of. "You've been compromised, Carter," Cole sneered. "Just like him." Carter's expression hardened, but his voice remained calm. "No. I'm doing what you should have done years ago. Exposing the truth." Suddenly, the warehouse was filled with noise as several undercover agents emerged from the shadows, weapons drawn. It was clear. Carter had been working undercover, infiltrating the FBI's own ranks. His loyalty had never been to the Bureau. It had always been to exposing the rot at its core. The escape. David's mind spun, struggling to comprehend the twist. Cole was being cornered, and Carter had just flipped the script on everything David thought he knew. The man who had once been his ally was now his savior, or at least, the one offering him a chance at redemption. Carter moved toward David, his hand outstretched. "We're getting out of here, David. Now." David didn't hesitate. He reached out, taking Carter's hand. There was no time to question it, no time to think. He had one chance to escape, and he wasn't going to waste it. Shots rang out as Cole and his remaining loyal agents tried to fight back. The sound of gunfire echoed through the warehouse, but Carter and David moved swiftly, ducking behind crates and using the chaos to their advantage. They made it to the back exit, where a waiting van was parked. The door slid open, and Carter shoved David inside. "Get in. Now." Carter barked. David didn't look back as the van sped off into the night. He had no idea what was coming next. Everything had changed. The FBI was no longer the force for good he had once believed it to be. And the cartel? They were no better. David had learned the hard way that everyone had their price, and survival came at the cost of your soul. But now, with Carter by his side, David had a choice. Continue to run, continue to fight, or finally take the war to those who had played him from the start. David's heart raced as the van sped through the quiet streets, the headlights cutting through the darkness like a blade. The world outside seemed far away, as if everything that had happened, everything he had gone through, was part of another life, another person's story. But the truth was, there was no escaping what he had become. He was no longer a man with clear ideals or a sense of justice. He was a survivor, doing whatever it took to stay alive. Inside the van, Carter kept his eyes on the rearview mirror, scanning the road for any signs of pursuit. "We've bought some time, but we won't be safe for long. They'll come after us," Carter said, his voice steady, but filled with an urgency David couldn't ignore. David nodded, the weight of it all pressing down on him. What now? What happens next? Carter glanced over at him, his expression hardening. "Now, we get to work. There are still people out there, people we need to expose. The FBI is broken, and it won't heal until the truth is out." David leaned back in the seat, staring out the window at the empty streets. There was no going back now. His life had been upended by lies, by betrayal, and now it was time for the final piece of the puzzle to fall into place. The war he had fought for years, whether for justice, survival, or loyalty, wasn't over. It had only just begun. And as the van disappeared into the night, a sense of finality settled in. David Morgan was no longer a part of the system. He was the man on the outside, the one who would bring it all crashing down. The truth had been buried for too long, and now, David was going to expose it. He didn't know how or when, but he knew one thing for certain. The fight was far from over. Thank you for joining me in today's case. What do you think? Was David able to escape his past and finally find a way out, or has the truth cost him everything? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. If you haven't already, make sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you don't miss our next chilling story. Until next time, remember, the truth is out there. Sometimes it just takes a little digging to uncover it.